I'm going to kind of date myself here. How many people here remember Woolworth's store in Elmira? There's a good number of us, good. When I was little, I'm talking 4, 5, 6 years old, my mother and my grandma Clary used to love to go to downtown Elmira and go shopping. And of course, being small, they'd drag me along with them. And we'd go to Woolworth and we'd have lunch and make kind of a day of it. Well, at that time, I was absolutely obsessed with Matchbox cars. Okay? And keep in mind, this was the time when it was still safe to let your kid wander through the store and not really worry about it too much. So here we are walking through Woolworths, and we get to the aisle where the Matchbox cars are, and off I go. And I'm down there looking at these cars, trying to figure out which ones I like and which ones I don't have and all that. And finally, after a couple of minutes, it strikes me, I'm not hearing familiar voices, and I don't see those familiar faces. And all of a sudden, there's that moment of abject terror that says, I'm lost. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to go to. And being a small child, I cried, and quite loudly. Now, Graham Clary at that time was still pretty fleet of foot, and she beat my mother around the corner to find me. And being the good grandma that she was, she scooped me up and gave me a big hug and reached over and grabbed the exact car that I was looking at. And then she did something very profound. She wiped away my tears. You know, you'd think that's a very simple act and it doesn't carry a whole lot. But think about it. Even an infant who doesn't understand language yet understands that motion. And what is it really saying? That action says, I can't take away your pain. I can't remove your suffering, but I can share in it, and I've got proof. Because here's your tear on my finger. We now share that feeling, that emotion, that trauma, whatever it is. It speaks volumes to the other person. And that's what we hear God saying to us in that second reading from Revelation. I will take away all your tears. Now, one thing to understand is that's not some far distant future. We don't have to be in heaven for that to happen. Because brothers and sisters, the kingdom of God is at hand now. Today. Here. Jesus promised us that. The kingdom of God is at hand. But also understand that if we sit and we wait for some giant cosmic hand to come down out of the sky and wipe away our tears, we're going to miss God at work. Because God doesn't work that way anymore. The days of the big miracles are over. But think about what's going on just in our own country over the last several years. Recently, Boston, Sandy Hook, Colorado, Aurora, Oklahoma City, 9/11. All these horrible disasters, not to mention natural disasters like hurricanes and tornadoes and floods. And what do you see? When any sane person would be heading the other direction, you see people turning and running to the site of the problem. That's God wiping away our tears. Just this week in Boston, people are running, trying to finish the marathon. The bombs go off, and what do? They stop and run towards the bomb to try and help the people who are injured. Or they run an extra 2 miles after doing 26.2. I can't even imagine that. They run an extra 2 miles to the hospital so that they can donate blood to help the injured. That's God wiping away our tears. Again, we can't wait for this big hand to come down and do it. And what's even harder to to sometimes accept is that by the fact of our baptism, we're expected to be that hand. St. Teresa said it very well. Christ has no hands but ours. No feet but ours. No eyes to look compassion on the world but ours. And so by the fact that we're baptized Christians, we have a job to do. We have a purpose. We have a mission. We can't just sit on our duffs and be spectators. Well, that's the comfortable thing to do. That's the easy thing to do. We're expected to be those people that run towards the trouble. We're called to do that by our very baptism. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a scary thing to do. And that's why we come here. We come here to be fed. We come here to be strengthened. We come here to realize that God understands what it's like to suffer. Because He died on that cross and rose again. And so we come as a group to say, I'm here to support you, and I need you to support me. And together we can go outside these safe four walls and be the hand of God to the people who are suffering need. And they don't have to be just people who are suffering because of some traumatic problem. They can be lonely. They can be hungry. They can be frightened. They could have gotten bad news from the doctor and need someone who understands. And it's in those instances when we draw on the courage and the strength that we get from that Eucharist that we become the hand of God. It seems almost impossible at times. We can feel lost because of everything that goes on around us. We can feel lost at that sense of innocence that we used to have, where it was safe for me as a 5 or 6-year-old to walk through the store unimpeded. We can feel lost at the sense of no longer being safe in our own homes. But all we need to do is remember what Jesus said in the gospel today. You're my sheep. No one can take you from my hand, because the Father and I are one. If you want another example of that, I recommend you go home and look up Romans 8. St. Paul says it very well. So I encourage you to read that. Take it to heart. Really believe that we belong to God. And just remember that, as God promised, and just as my grandma was there for me so many years ago to wipe away my tears, God will be there to wipe away yours as well.